Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the opening reception for the Jerome M. Westheimer Sr. and Wanda Odie Westheimer Distinguished Visiting Artist Chair, Robert Taylor. Before we begin with our official program, I want to make you aware of some upcoming events. If you like what you hear from Robert Taylor tonight, I would invite you to attend his gallery talk that will be in the exhibition tomorrow at 1 o'clock, where he'll have the opportunity to talk at length about several of the works in the exhibition. I'd also like to make you aware of an upcoming event. On October 20th, the Museum Association will be hosting the Silver Soiree, the Speakeasy, at the Rail House here in Norman. The event replicates the experience of a 1920s speakeasy and includes food, drink, games, and entertainment by the OU School of Music, the Weizenhofer School of Musical Theater, and Kyle Reed and the Low Swinging Chariots. Tickets are on sale now and available upstairs. You are encouraged to attend in period attire, so come as though you are going to an official speakeasy. There will be even a door with a slider and a password. So please come. I promise you this is going to be a great event. 7 to 11 o'clock on October 20th. You don't have to stay for all 4 hours, but if you don't, you're going to miss something. So, all right. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker. Robert Taylor, the sixth artist in the university's Jerome M. Westheimer Sr. and Wanda Odie Westheimer Distinguished Visiting Artist Chair program. The program gives the museum the opportunity to exhibit the work of an important contemporary artist, and that artist has the opportunity to work with both faculty and students at the OU School of Visual Arts. It is with great gratitude that we would like to thank Mrs. Wanda Odie Westheimer, who is with us tonight. As well as her family, John and George Odie. We appreciate their generous patronage and support of this important program. There are also a number of donors to this exhibition that are in the audience tonight, and I want to thank all of them. I'm hoping that I did not forget anyone. If I do, I'm sorry. You have my deepest apologies. But we want to thank Dr. J.W. Wiggins, Marode Cameron and Trish Freeman, Carl and Deborah Rubenstein, Sandy Cheshawala, Carol Beasley, Kelly and Sheila Leggett, Susan Leggett, and Mallory Taylor, and Jim and Linda Newby. Thank you for loaning to this exhibition. I also want to thank our dear departed friend Dan Brackett, who was a big supporter of Robert Taylor's career and unfortunately left us too soon, so thank you, Dan. Robert Taylor is a self-taught artist known for his depictions of Native American life at the end of the reservation era and around the turn of the 20th century, often with an enigmatic or decidedly mystical cast. He describes his deeply symbolic works as a response to a variety of religious traditions. Taylor attended Central Missouri State and the University of Tulsa. He was drafted into the Navy, where he served from 1970 to 1972. Taylor has exhibited and received awards from the Trail of Tears exhibition at the Cherokee National Museum in Tahlequah, the Five Civilized Tribes Museum, the Gallup Intertribal Indian Ceremonial, the Los Angeles Contemporary Art Fair, the Red Earth Festival, and the Smithsonian Institution. In 2005, he was commissioned by the state of Oklahoma to create a triptych commemorating the U.S. Marshals who served in Indian Territory. In addition to the exhibit that you see here tonight, multiple works from the museum's permanent collection are on display inside the OU Health Sciences Center, Harold Hamm Oklahoma Diabetes Center, and the Jim Thorpe Multicultural Center on the OU Norman campus. Please join me in welcoming Robert Taylor.
Hello, my name's Robert Taylor. First, I'm going to jump in, just same thing Mark did. First, I want to say it's an honor to be standing here before you. It would not be happening without many people. And if I miss anybody tonight, I apologize, but you're always in my thoughts. But it wouldn't happen at all without the guidance, love, and noble hearts of Susan Leggett, Mallory Taylor, my daughter, and my friend dear friend and mentor, Doris Littrell. All the donors, collectors, friends, and of course, the Westheimer family. And I got to meet tonight for the first time, and I appreciate that, what I told you earlier. You give a platform to artists that is rare and is very valuable. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Oklahoma. I want to thank the Oklahoma University and the staff of the Fred Jones Jr. Museum. First, we're going to say it's Mark White, Tracy Bidwell, Selena Caparo, Tanya Denton, Hadley German, Leisha Mogg, Chris Mackey, Melissa Ski, Brad Stevens, Christy Wyatt, Michael Bender, Jinjo Gentry, and Melinda Seaton. They also, without them, this would not be a cumulative effect, so thank you very much. Now I've been told to come up here and talk about myself. So I'm going to make it real easy. I'm a door maker. I know you came here to look at paintings. I'm telling you, you're here to look at doors. If I've decorated that door correctly, you're going to open it and you're going to go someplace that not even I can go. And that is what art is. It is a collaboration. Without the viewer, it doesn't exist. So hopefully I do it right, and you'll go and pick one, or I hope all 60 doors to go through. And when you do that, it has become art because you move from being the observer to the participant. And that's what art is. I've spent my whole career trying to tell people that we're all one tribe, just different clans, and that art resides in the human spirit. We're all artists. Regardless of what your profession, you are truly an artist. Art is nothing but passion, and passion comes through in many different forms. Go through the show, exhibition, like I said, there's 60 doors for you to go through. Each one has a different environment. The journeys may seem a little bit different, but they all end in the same place, a higher form of thought, I hope, and we all hope. That's what art is here to do and what it should be doing. When you look through it, you'll realize I start all pieces with either a title, a story, or an emotion. And I hope that thread starts with the first door and it weaves a blanket for you, or a piece of fabric, all the way through. All 60 are pulled together to make that fabric of art. When you look at them, you're going to realize there's some themes. That's the human condition that we find ourselves in. As an artist, you find yourself trying to put something out, emote emotion, or tell a story. And sometimes the first one doesn't do it. You do the second one, then you do the third one, and then you hope I've told the story and you move on. Not a public speaker, so bear with me. Here we go. Now, to talk about my work, to give you an idea of how I start with a story. The title of this piece is Ghost Story. This started from one thing, which is a theme that you'll see very prevalent in the gallery and also through the whole history of my work, and it's the ghost dance movement. I find that it's a perfect vehicle to try to say what I've been trying to say my whole career, 40 years now, that we're one single tribe. The ghost dance was an attempt to bring Western religion into native religion. Work. Ghost story, this is Babel. They're both the same story, but with different imagery. And as an artist, I find it's my job to come up with a different imagery. This is some of it you're going to see. The butterflies you'll see prevalent. You'll see that in a lot of the paintings. And the reason the butterfly there is I'm trying to put out my vocabulary. As an artist, you try to figure out a way to tell the story, to try to bring people in, to pull them in to become part of that painting. And to do that, you have to have a language. Even though art speaks to us on an emotional level, our brain sees everything in words, in verbiage. You look at a butterfly, you don't think of the image you're seeing. The first thing that pops into your mind is butterfly. So as an artist, it's my job to try to teach you that's part of my vocabulary. So when you see that butterfly in my work, it's going to stand for certain symbols. And that becomes the language that I try to use throughout my work. And I try to tell other artists that the reason you're repetitive on this, I've had people ask me in the past why you do so many butterflies. Well, the first question I'd ask them is, if you're a writer, do you ask a writer why do they use the word the, and? Why do they use it over and over? It's part of the vocabulary, and once you get used to it, you become familiar with it. In art, that's what you have to seek out on every artist, no matter who the artist is what language are they trying to tell, are they using, and what are they trying to tell me? What I learned early on in my career, my first venture into the art world, I was taken to a gallery, and I walked in with several pieces. The gallery owner took some of them, told me to take some of them back, and he picked out one single piece. And he looked at me, goes, "Do you want to be an artist?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "So you plan on doing this for a long time?" I said, "I hope so." "And you plan on painting more than just one painting?" I said, "Yes." He said, "So you don't have to try to tell everything in one painting." He held it up and just threw it on the floor. He says, "I look at that, I get motion sickness. I'm looking all over the canvas." And that's where I learned the whole concept of learning your language and putting it out so other people can learn it. That's why when you see the themes, you're going to see the same imagery over and over. As I move along, I talk about the butterflies, which butterfly stems all the way back to the Renaissance artists. It stands for rebirth, regeneration, transformation. Also, I like to use it for the concept of fragility of life, how beautiful life is, but it's very fragile. And I'd be remiss also, the other reason is when I was 19 years old going into the military, I was taken to the Tulsa bus station by my grandparents. I was raised by my grandfather and grandmother. And as I was getting on the bus, my grandfather grabbed me, and this is the last words he spoke to me because he passed away while I was in the service, was that, "Remember, you're going to go to strange places, see strange people, but everybody understands a smile and a butterfly." And that was the beginning of my education of understanding language and how to emote something out of somebody, to get a response. So I started using the butterfly for those reasons. For one thing, like I said, because of my grandfather, but also because it's the imagery that everybody understands. So I can juxtapose that or use that in a painting for somebody to ask, why is it there? And as an artist, I'm going to tell you, I've got you hooked. It's just like a fish. I've set the hook there. If you're asking that question, then you've opened that door. And now what I want to know from you is, what do you see? Because that's the art. But in this case, it's a historical piece. And with historical pieces, the only thing as an artist, our only allegiance is to the truth. I've tried to tell people, as an artist, art can be a lonely profession. It also can be a kind of a profession where you spend so much time alone, you carry on a lot of conversations with inanimate objects. You begin to think that you're the funniest person in the world, the smartest person in the world, and you find yourself yelling at the radio and television while you're working. But the purpose for that is that we always like to say, as an artist, you experience something to learn it, but then you have to pull back. It's just like whatever your profession in life, you have to pull back at some time to be the observer, to see the whole picture, to have the true understanding of what's taking place or what's presented in front of you. So my only allegiance has always been to my thought and what I'm trying to put out, not to any other purpose. I've never claimed, I've always tried to tell people, I'm not an Indian artist. I'm an artist who happens to be Indian. And I happen to use Indians as the imagery. But what I'm expressing is the human condition, not any one group. We all have the same thoughts, fears, and aspirations. So to try to see ourselves as anything separate, to me, is an oxymoron. We're all one tribe, different clans. I've talked to my daughter about this before, and I told her if they dig my body up 500 years from now, they're not going to say what my bloodline is. They're going to say his probably tribe was America, probably Oklahoma clan if it's dug up here. So once we start realizing that, it's easier to step through the door that I've tried to build, because it has nothing to do with an ethnic viewpoint, because we're all tribal. I like using the tribal imagery because it speaks to the soul of every human being, because innately we are tribal. We respond to the same basic symbols, no matter what part of the world you're in. If you go to the holy men in any tribal group, any place in the world, they're going to sit there and tell you, You'll see ethnic stories and say, well, why did these people like American Indians? Why do they wear feathers in their hair? I asked my grandfather that one time. Why does everybody have to have feathers in their hair? Well, first off, I learned as I got a little older, learning that we've tried to freeze frame history in a 50 to 75 year period, because it's not necessarily true. That doesn't make it Indian to have feathers. But the reason I use the feathers is because if you talk to the holy man of any other tribe, they're going to tell you the feathers are in the hair for one thing. It's a symbol. They can be used to show for different deeds and accomplishments, but the higher order of it is that all art, which is the same thing as what I'm talking about with the feathers, is that your thoughts should always exceed to a higher plane. And the idea of the feathers is to remind you to carry your thoughts to a higher degree than what is the base human response to things. So with a lot of that said, we're going to jump real quick. As you can see, this is the story of the ghost dance. Historically, I'll approach work. In this case, there's 12 figures to represent the 12 disciples. The Christ figure, I'll learn how to use it now. The Christ figure is represented by this coming out of the hat. The gentleman sitting down was Wavoka. He was the Paiute prophet. And he was raised on the Paiute reservation. He could read 2 books. He could read the Bible and a farmer's almanac. Between the 2 of those, he came up with a religion. And he knew how to make it set because he called this meeting on the day of an eclipse. And it's easy to get a bunch of followers when you said, watch as the sun disappears. And thus, the ghost dance was born. And that's what this piece is about. This is Wavoka again. He's preaching the same thing. This represents the idea of the eclipse. But on this painting, all this, from what he was promising, this is what happens. It's the same here. This is what was promised, and this is what happened. Promise of the rapture, the idea of the circle dance, the sacred feather, communion right here, the loaf of bread, the turtle for extended life coming out. But the sacramental wine has been spilled on the ground. The crow, which was the symbol, crow and ravens and magpies were the symbol for the ghost dance, has stolen the medicine, has come over here and opened Pandora's box. And what the ghost dance of Wounded Knee led to was Eden was lost. We have the egg shattered to the idea of creation and the shattered butterfly. But the key, I always try to tell people this, the key is still on the ground. This is not, to me, a sad painting. It was a disaster when it happened, but from it we learn things. Same thing here, what was promised, what happened. It was a tragedy, but what was born from that was another culture. The day the American Indian met the European, both cultures died on this shore. People forget a few hundred years ago there was no such thing as a Mexican. It was Spanish and Indians. It's the same way that happened on this continent, and we become one tribe. I've always claimed anybody born in this country is Native American. I don't see how anything else. I was raised being told I was part Indian, part white. But everybody born in this country, in my opinion, is a Native American. So I don't really use that term except to talk about all of us, the one big tribe. Then from the historical perspective of work, when I approach the historical work, that requires a lot of research, which I do enjoy, so I won't complain about that. But then you have certain pieces as an artist that you approach that you just want to do. And like I told you, the first 2 paintings I was talking about, they were born from a story. I wanted to tell a story. This was born simply from a title. Been there, done that. And when I painted it, I used to try to tell people this is a true man's painting for one reason. Any man who's ever got out there and tried to do certain things, you'll find yourself looking at somebody else as you hear the story of the tragedy going, been there, done that. And in this case, what I depicted, this is a Cheyenne dog soldier. Right here is what this is called a dog rope. It's a dog soldier. All the Plains tribes had dog soldiers. The dog soldier was the elite military. They were the SEALs, the Green Berets, which way you want to look at it, but they were the elite soldiers to be there to defend the tribe. And they would defend their tribe or their belief until death. And that's what this dog rope's for. Once they staked that out with their pen, they made a statement to all their fellow soldiers, and all their enemy, that I am either victorious where I stand or I die where I stand. The only way he could ever be released from that vow is if another dog soldier came along and pulled the picket out. Now, with that said, now comes why the title came about. Dog soldier, and this is the way I approach work. This dog soldier has run into battle. He ran into battle naked, which makes us all vulnerable. Anytime you're naked, you always feel vulnerable. He's made himself vulnerable. He picked up his shield, which is a contrary shield. This is a Southern Cheyenne contrary shield. Contraries were to do everything opposite of what you would think. If they wanted to say goodbye, they'd say hello. If they wanted to ride the horse, they may jump on the horse backwards and ride backwards. They were just to show that they were crazy enough you should be afraid of them. And in this case, he lives up to it because his shield's already been damaged, but his shield also looks like a target. So he's made himself a target as he's ran out there. He's burned the bridges behind him, ignored the symbols and the signs that this is a dangerous place. He's found himself staked out on the edge of a cliff where no place to go. He's burning his candle at both ends. He's hobbled his horse. He's dropped his weaponry on the ground. And as a dog soldier, he's not allowed to pick his weapons up. Another dog soldier has to do it. So he's left himself defenseless because his bowstring, he has busted, and he shot himself in the foot. Every man can say, been there, done that. And so that's the way I'll approach a lot of the work like this. Then another one of the themes that you'll find as you go through the gallery, I do touch a lot, and I think they have it classified as faith. I think that as a species, we're a faith-based species. We always act upon faith. I think anybody with higher intelligence has to, because nobody really knows what's coming, and you always have to keep, as Doris Littrell told me, every human being has to just figure the bounty will come, regardless. You just keep going forward. And this piece, this is a Native American church piece. A lot of people just know it as peyote paintings. But what I'm trying to show here is, once again, we're the same tribe. We express things differently, but once again, you'll see the butterfly. And this is strictly all peyote and Native American church symbology. But it's juxtaposed with the crucifix there. Because what I want people to know is that no matter what your faith, it's the same as another faith. And there's a reason why the word faith is there. It means there's no real facts to back up any major or minor religion. Everything is done on faith. And in life, we've discovered that's the way most of your life will be. You wake up every morning and go to bed at night thinking with the faith that you're going to wake up the next morning, which is a good way of looking at it, but it's also the tribal way would be to look at it. You get up every morning, you're born, you go to bed at night because you die, and you're reborn the next morning, because if you've been there, done that the day before, maybe you'll do better the next day, and everything's a lesson learned. But these paintings, although they're based in faith, that's the whole story that I'm trying to tell. Another Native American church piece, you'll see the same symbology that's going on, but once again, it's just speaking to that inner self of every human being that we're always asking ourselves, what's missing, where am I going, why am I here? And we just keep moving on faith, regardless of your belief system, regardless of what God you pray to, it's still the same thought. With that idea of the thought, I'm going to move on to this. This painting's called The Great Relative. And this is another reason some things just deserve a painting. And Albert Einstein deserved a painting. This painting was brought about from reading a Time magazine article where an interviewer asked Albert Einstein, how does it feel to have made so many great discoveries and have so much accomplishment in your life? The interviewers stated that Mr. Einstein stared off into the nothingness and then looked at her glaringly and said, I've just been blessed to be able to see what's always existed. I thought anybody who sees the world that way, beyond his other accomplishment, deserved a painting. And with that said, that's why in this the painting is called The Great Relative and the Oracle. And underneath it, I would put a little extension to that called the stump speech, because the actual great relative is Albert Einstein, because he was actually adopted by the Hopi, and that was given his name. He was called the Great Relative, after his theory of relativity. Because of that, though, the stump speech is over here. We have the hawk on the stump. But if you'll get close enough, you'll look, and carved into the stump is E equals MC squared. It already existed, and that's the way Albert Einstein looked at it. And people who act upon, as he put it, he acted upon faith to keep doing to make his discoveries. And he deserved a painting for that. And him thinking that everything always existed leads me to this one. This painting's called All That Is Before Me and Within Me. And in this painting, it's strictly nothing but symbology. Every major religion is represented, and all the great thoughts, what I consider some of the great thoughts of humankind, are represented. The trick is you have to find them, but they're all in there. We'll give you an idea. All the symbols are in there. First, we have this right here, the idea of the skull. That's the idea of you have to lose yourself. You have to lose your body. You have to shed the body or this earthly skin to actually gain the enlightenment that we all look for. That's in prayer. I've had my work called sometimes of the exploding heads or the distorted figures or the dissipating faces. All that splattering that you'll see, and it's not on this piece, but on splattering on the paintings you'll look at, all that represents is one thing. It's called visual prayer. It's the only way I knew to show somebody that they're in prayer. They've gone into ceremony. And when you go into ceremony, you never leave it the same way as you entered, regardless of what you think took place. Just the mere fact that you showed up, were there, and put the time in, makes you a different person when you leave. You may not know it at the time, but it does happen. And that's why in this piece, this is the symbol for prayer. It opens your heart, which flows into new discoveries and rebirth. That's the butterfly. Then on our life cycles, the idea of the turtle, plus the idea of the earth. A lot of tribal groups, not just in America, think of the earth itself, the land masses, as that of the turtle shell. And that's what that also represents. Then when you come down here, you'll start looking at spirit beings. But right here, we'll have the egg that has broken. We have the water coming from the egg, because without water, there is no life. We have the fish to show that, and also represents the idea of the Christ idea. Here we have corn coming up to the earth, which now we have Christianity, we have Judaism, we have the wheel of Buddha, which is the wheel of law. Like I said, as we go through that, I could go through here. If you start looking, you're going to find the symbols for every major religion and different thought processes that humans use. And basically, once again, this piece is just to reinforce that we are all one tribe. There is nothing truly unique about any group of individuals. Without the group, we tend to cease to exist, and that's why we have to at some point in time acknowledge the fact that we are that single tribe, just different clans, and we can understand why the different faiths take place, and why it's the same thought expressed differently. That's what brings us right back to this. This is another peyote piece. But in this peyote piece, this is a piece that I painted for my dear friend Doris Littrell. And that's why I wanted to show this for one reason, to give you an idea of what my thought process is when I paint. This was done specifically for Doris. Doris saw the peyote paintings of the old timers as the heart and soul. People have to remember that the early native, and I don't care where you go in the world, but I'll use America, the early native artists were the shamans of the tribe. That slowly, over time, they were elevated in a lot of ways to become the tribal historians. Thus, we have the winter counts, we have the buffalo hides, tell us everything that took place year to year. And then in the 1920s, 1915 to 1920, something miraculous took place among the tribes. Native artists went from being the tribal historian to actually commercial artists. For the first time, they stepped out, and they started selling their work. Thanks to Dorothy Dunn School, the Oscar Jacobson here at OU, they started refining their work. But when you look at the old timers, I say that with the highest respect. They were elders. The old timers, their true love and thought process was shown in their peyote pieces. because that was something sacred to them. You could see that, you'd look at dancers, they're painters, Monroe, Sato, Mo Pope, you'll look at them, and you're gonna see they're dancers, they're beautiful paintings. But if you really get into their heads and wanna know what they really were all about, you look at their peyote paintings. Because that was the first time you had tribal members not asking permission, can I show this? Can I talk about it? They put it out there. They were true artists. They were observers, and they put out their own thoughts of it. They without fear of repercussion, they did it. And that's what this figure represents there. And we started here, coming up, and what I did, I mentioned Monroe Sato. This is a stylized peyote button, a copy of Monroe Sato. Then we have right here, these are the Woody Crumbo stylized teepees. We come up here to the water drum. I put this figure to represent the artist, because Doris was a springboard for the artist. I use that almost like a trampoline to elevate themselves, to become more known, and to actually make a career out of painting. Then we have another Monroe Sato stylized peyote bird. This is my handprint with the maze to show my own journey in life that led me to Doris. Coming down here, Robert Redbird stylized peyote buttons, and then I put my signature entering the house of Doris. Now, the reason I also say that's the house of Doris, because over here, I forgot to say that, as this dancer, this is the Seminole butterfly symbol. That was Doris's sign. That's what she had on her gallery. That's what she used her entire life, was this, to represent her gallery. And I juxtaposed the butterfly. Once again, the reason the butterfly's in here is once again to try to tell people what my language is. Monroe Sato used this to tell you his language. I'm telling you that my butterfly equates to what Monroe Sato did. It's just a different symbol, but it means the same thing. Through the symbology and the chance for this to move forward like that, it gives you the chance of realizing that you don't have to repeat over and over, though, even though you're using the same language. And that gave birth to what is now my medicine bundles or bird bundles, that you'll see a few of them in the show. They still are the same thing. When I ask you to, when you look at when you look at a bundle, a medicine bundle of any kind, but in this case, the bird bundles I have in the show, start looking not at the bird as much as what's attached to the bird. Because the owners of any medicine will imbue their beliefs upon that fixture or that creature. They not only want to have the same abilities of seeing like an eagle, flying high, swiftness, but they also imbue that same life into that bundle. And it gives them the courage to move forward. We're all rooted in faith. And regardless, it's that faith that allows you to keep moving forward. Somebody asked me earlier today when I was talking with the students, asked me about the shields and shield paintings. I went through a period where I painted a lot of shields. Shields were very personal. And I like that because it didn't need an interpretation from anybody. The owner knew what they stood for. And one of the students, I used to go to my daughter's school when she was in grade school, and I'd talk to everybody, and I'd take a buffalo shield. And these are just grade school kids when I started doing this. And I'd pass the shield around. I'd let them talk, feel about it, and then ask them one question. Do you think that would stop a bullet? No. Then why do you think they would? Because at first I would ask them, I'm remiss. I'd say, why do you think they carried the shield? Well, it was protection. Well, do you think that would stop a bullet? No. Then why would they carry the shield? And this is what I'm asking you to, when you walk in there and look at these 60 doors. Ask, why did he put that there? What does it really mean? And as I would tell those students about the shields, what that shield actually represent was a symbol. It's something we all carry. No matter what, I don't know what every individual carries. It could be a totem, talisman, crucifix, it could be any religious symbol. But what it's there for is one thing, to tell you how to conduct your life. And in times of stress, what you should do. It's a roadmap. And that's what, in tribal groups, it used to be. I used to always talk about, I have, in my bloodline, I have a Blackfoot and I have a Cherokee. And if somewhere down the line, the Cherokee had met the Blackfoot, we'll say in Wyoming, they didn't speak the same language. They just knew that one of them couldn't take the cold or one of them couldn't take the heat. And they met in Wyoming. But by looking at each other, they could tell you what tribe they were from. They'd have an idea of the accomplishments of that person's in their lifetime, and they might even have a good idea, a handle on what the name of the person would be. And it's simply because of all their accoutrements. We still do that today, but we do it in a different way. The accoutrements at that time all had to be earned a lot harder in a lot harder ways. But they stood for something, and everybody knew what that symbol. They knew why you had that feather. Not everybody got to run around with this headdress. Not everybody got to wear this shirt. And they knew if somebody was wearing it, there was a reason and why they did it. Now, we make it a little easier, but we still do the same thing. There's a reason people drive certain types of cars. They may wear certain types of clothes. And when somebody looks at you, they still have an idea of something of your place in life. It's symbology. We are rooted in it as human beings. So art is a natural for everybody. And we're all artists. No matter who you are, what your profession, I keep coming back to this, but we're all artists. It's whatever your passion is. And so with that, I would like to tell everybody that to think of yourself as an artist is that your body is a brush, the earth is your canvas, and your life is your painting. And you should try to go out there and paint a masterpiece. And it's just like any artist. You make a mistake one day, you can paint it out the next day. So with a lot of that said, I'd like to just take the time right now real quick and ask if there are any questions from anybody, anything that I have not touched upon or you'd like me to touch upon. Are there any questions? Both. It's a dichotomy. I love the Aborigines of Australia believe that actually instead of moving forward in time, we're moving backwards, just like the plant grows to release the seed to fall and grow again. Time is a human experience, and it doesn't exist outside of our world. And I think physicists would basically, time is a human construct. So everything is taking place at all time within us. And it's just like one time somebody asked me about life after death, and I said, that's easy to prove, because the only reason any of us move, walk, talk, is there's an electrical charge up there in the brain. And upon death, that electrical charge, that impulse leaves the body. The body is just a makeup of a bunch of atoms, but that energy, that electric spark, can never be destroyed. It can be reformed, it can be moved, placed someplace else, but it will always exist. You cannot destroy energy. And that's the same concept that I have here. It exists before, after, and during. If that makes sense to you. Betcha. Does anybody else have a question? Yes. Yes. I've attended several meetings, and then, like I said, I pull back and become the observer, and I put my stamp on my belief system on it. We're back to that. I truly feel that artists have no allegiance except to the truth. That's the only way you can objectively go up to something and try to produce it with any sincerity. So yes, and some of my other paintings will be a little bit more in detail about that, but my personal experience is expressed right through what I believe the system is. And like we're back to, I juxtapose it against other beliefs and faiths because they're all equal in my thought. It's just expressed differently. Just like no matter what continent you go to, every culture will tell you that they'll have a name for their deity. But when you really get to talking to them about their faith and their deity, you can sit there and take that name out and put another one in there. It's interchangeable, in my humble opinion. That's the way I approach that. And the peyote paintings, I find they're very misrepresented a lot. Oklahoma is a place that they're easily presented where a lot of people understand the imagery. Arizona is another good place to do it. And you go to places like New Mexico, it gets a little bit harder. You get to ask, what were you on when you painted that, or what did you, and I finally got to use my favorite line of any artist, that Salvador Dali. I saw a document on him, and he put on a show on the beach in Spain, and when it was over, the interviewer asked him, "Mr. Dali, are you on drugs?" Salvador Dali, in his fashion, threw his cape around him, turned and looked at the reporter and said, "I am a drug," and turned around and walked off. So that's the way I look at that. I don't want to be the sacrament, but I believe that we all have that ability. Once again, I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank the Westheimer family. Like I've told you, you've given artists a platform that cannot be constructed by themselves, and I appreciate it greatly. The museum and all the staff, and for all the donors, but for everybody who's here, the most valuable thing you have in your life is your time, and I appreciate you letting me have some of it tonight. So thank you. Enjoy the show. Open all 60 doors.
Well, as he said, please join us for the reception and the exhibition next door. He will be signing catalogs in the gallery, so if you have not had the opportunity to purchase one of the publications and have Robert sign it, he would be happy to do so. But thanks for coming tonight. It was a pleasure to see all of you, and enjoy.